Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We sift through, well, some pretty fascinating sources to bring you the insights that matter.
And today we have something truly exceptional.
Yeah, exceptional is one word for it. Something landed on our virtual desk, and it's genuinely unlike anything we've seen before, or anyone, really.
It really is an extraordinary situation. This isn't, some dusty file from an archive. It was actually discovered just recently, right here in 2025.
By anti-encryption specialists, of all people.
Exactly. They were just, doing their usual work, scanning data streams, and they stumbled upon this pattern. Cryptic, unknown, didn't match anything known.
And here's where it just gets completely wild. The data inside that pattern, it looks like a document written, composed in the year 2078.
2078.
I mean, think about that. That's over nearly 60 years from now. My first reaction was just,
Yeah.
how? How do we even start to think about that? Finding something so out of time.
It's precisely what makes it so compelling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And look, this isn't some, elaborate hoax or conspiracy theory. The analysis suggests it's an accidental find.
Accidental.
Seems that way. Like raw output from an AI processor somehow intercepted a genuine, unfiltered peek into a possible future.
And the document itself has a title.
It does. Archive document, Post-fragmentation Communities Research, 2087-2088.
Okay, wait. So an AI from 2078 is archiving research conducted nearly a decade after it was composed about stuff happening almost 60 years from our present.
That's what it looks like. Research into social, intellectual developments. Yeah, about 60 years from now.
Okay, so our mission today for this deep dive is to unpack what this future document tells us about consciousness, community, learning.
And pull out those key insights, the nuggets of knowledge that might actually resonate with you listening right now in 2025.
Right. This isn't just about gawking at the future. It feels like a potential shortcut. Understanding how knowing, how connecting might evolve. It's potentially mind-bending stuff. So where do we start?
Well, to get a handle on these future communities, we need the context. The document mentions a period, roughly 2071 to 2085. It calls it the Great Reintegration.
The Great Reintegration. Sounds significant, like a major global shift.
The document doesn't detail it, but yeah, it implies some kind of major realignment that set the stage for these new kinds of communities to form.
Okay, so after this reintegration, we get research from Dr. Sarah Chen from Oxford.
Yes, Oxford's Institute for Consciousness Studies. Her research summary, dated March 2087, documents these small communities emerging.
And what was it about them that caught her attention? What was the groundbreaking part?
The core concept, a thing they all seem to be working towards or recovering, was something called final participation.
Final participation. Where does that term come from?
Dr. Chen credits an earlier thinker, Owen Barfield, and it describes a type of consciousness, basically, one that fully integrates sharp analytical thinking with a kind of deep symbolic perception.
So, logic and intuition working together, not separate.
Exactly, not seeing them as opposed, but as two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
A unified awareness. It's a real challenge to our current way of thinking, where we often keep those very separate, don't we?
We absolutely do. Analysis over here, maybe intuition or feeling over there, but integrating them. Wow. Does the document give actual examples? How did these communities do this?
It does. It focuses on three main communities Dr. Chen studied. Each had its own flavor, its own approach.
Okay, let's hear about them.
First, there's the Canterbury Circle, founded earliest in 2073, about 47 adults. Their practice is called integral liturgy.
Integral liturgy, and that involves?
It combines traditional Anglican structure, but merges it with contemplative reading methods apparently drawn from Coleridge's notebooks.
Coleridge. Interesting. And how does that translate to, say, educating their kids?
They use what's called symbolic pedagogy. So learning seems deeply rooted in meaning, metaphor, symbols, not just facts and figures, cultivating a different kind of awareness from the start, it seems.
Okay, who's next?
The Zurich Workshop, founded a year later, 2074. Their approach is different again. They blend philosophical discussion with manual crafts.
Seriously, like debating metaphysics while carving wood.
Sort of, yeah. The document calls it embodied thinking. The physical work isn't separate from the intellectual work, it's part of it, grounding the abstract in the tangible.
Less PowerPoint, more sawdust. I could see the appeal, actually. And the third one?
The Melbourne Gardeners, founded 2076, their practice, sacramental horticulture.
Sacramental horticulture. Okay, that sounds like more than just organic farming.
Oh, much more. They view the soil, the plants, everything, not as resources to be managed or exploited, but as collaborators, partners in a kind of sacred process, a fundamental shift in relating to the natural world, participating with it.
Wow. Canterbury, Zurich, Melbourne, different practices, but are there common threads the document points out?
Absolutely. That's key. They all integrate old wisdom with new knowledge. They use participatory learning. They sustain themselves through gift economies.
Gift economies. That's a radical departure from how we operate now.
Huge. And another thing, despite deep spiritual commitments, there's apparently an absence of rigid sectarianism. They seem to have found a way past those divisions.
Considering how divided we often feel, that alone is significant. What could that mean for us, looking at our own societies?
Well, it suggests the future where communities can be both intensely focused and deeply connected, intellectually sharp and spiritually grounded without the infighting. It's a fascinating model.
And the document gives us a closer look at one of these practices.
Yes, thankfully. There's a personal letter from a Margaret Thornfield at the Canterbury Circle. It's dated September 2088, written to Dr. James Whitmore, a researcher we'll hear more about. She describes their participatory reading.
Participatory reading. Okay, what does she say?
Her core insight is, it's simple but powerful. She writes, and I'm quoting roughly here, we're learning to listen with the text rather than just listen to it.
Listen with it, not to it. What's the difference there?
She explains, it's like the difference between standing outside a conversation, just hearing it, and actually being invited into it. She gives an anecdote.
Oh, yeah.
About a young person, Timothy, reading the Emmaus story aloud. She says she suddenly felt like she was walking alongside those disciples, feeling their confusion, their hope.
Wow.
And she clarifies, it wasn't just vivid imagination. It felt, she says, more like the text was permeable, inviting participation, like the boundary dissolved.
Permeable text. That's a striking image. So how do they actually practice this? What's the routine?
It sounds almost deceptively simple. They gather early, 7 a.m., someone reads scripture aloud, then they just sit in silence for a bit.
Silence. Interesting.
Yeah. And after the silence, people share simple observations, not deep analysis or interpretation, but just what word, what phrase caught their attention, what resonated.
So it's not about extracting meaning like we usually try to do?
Exactly what Thornfield stresses. She says they don't try to extract meaning. Instead, the text itself orchestrates our attention, drawing them deeper into its reality. It's about cultivating a kind of active receptivity.
Active receptivity. And this way of reading, this practice, it had real effects on the community.
Tangible ones, according to Thornfield. She says the community became more productive, more peaceful. Old conflicts, like between the more contemplative types and the more activist types, started to dissolve.
That's significant. Integration in action.
And she's very clear. This isn't about going back to some mythical past, some pre-modern mindset. It's about completing modern consciousness, integrating the analytical skills we've developed with this participatory awareness that maybe got lost along the way.
Completing, not regressing. That's a crucial distinction.
It's hugely important.
And this naturally leads us to think about broader implications, right? Beyond these specific communities. Because Dr. James Whitmore, the researcher Thornfield was writing to, he saw the potential for academia.
He absolutely did. In November 2088, just a couple of months after that letter, he sends this quite bold memorandum to the Faculty Senate at the University of Edinburgh, proposing a pilot program in what he calls participatory scholarship.
Participatory scholarship. Okay, that sounds revolutionary for a traditional university. What was his argument? How did he sell it?
His core point was that these communities had achieved something genuinely unprecedented, the practical, lived integration of scholarly precision with this symbolic participatory consciousness.
So, not treating them as opposites.
Right. Seeing critical analysis and this deeper engagement as complementary, two movements of a single unified awareness. He believed they actually enhance each other.
Did he have evidence for that beyond Thornfield's letter?
He mentions observing a discussion at Canterbury. They were discussing Coleridge's Biographia Literaria.
Ah, Coleridge again.
Yes. And Whitmore says this discussion was, quote, simultaneously more rigorous and more transformative than typical academic seminars, both scholarly and formative, critical and contemplative.
Wow. More rigorous and more transformative. We usually think there's a trade-off there, don't we?
We often do. But Whitmore argued this integrated approach actually deepens the rigor. So how would his pilot program work? How would they actually try this at the university?
Well, the proposal was pretty hands-on. 5 faculty members from different fields would actually go and spend a semester with these communities. Canterbury, Zurich, Melbourne.
So embed themselves, not just study from afar.
Exactly. Immerse themselves, learn the practices, and then come back and adapt those practices for their own teaching and research at Edinburgh.
What kind of practices specifically?
Things like engaging in daily contemplative reading alongside their usual analytical study. Experimenting with that embodied thinking from Zurich, maybe combining intellectual work with some kind of manual activity.
And teaching.
Developing new ways of teaching, pedagogy, that trains students' perception, their ability to listen with, not just their analytical skills, and also actually researching the cognitive and maybe even spiritual effects of doing scholarship this way.
Okay, so the big question. What results did Whitmore expect? Why should a university, or frankly, why should we listening now, care about this? What's the payoff?
He outlines some pretty compelling potential benefits. First, enhanced research quality.
How so?
He argues that the contemplative engagement actually deepens analytical precision. He mentions Brother Michael at Canterbury, describing it as thinking with the heart. Thinking with the heart. What does that mean in a research context?
It seems to mean a way of knowing that perceives connections, patterns, nuances that purely analytical thinking might just miss. Imagine the potential for breakthroughs if you can access that.
Okay, that's research. What about students?
Improve student formation. Learning that engages the whole person, not just the intellect, like the Melbourne community's approach. More effective, more meaningful learning, developing more integrated individuals.
And what about how disciplines relate to each other? Academia is so siloed.
He saw this participatory consciousness as a natural bridge builder. It helps perceive the underlying unity that specialization tends to fragment. Think about the potential for real interdisciplinary breakthroughs.
That addresses a huge problem in modern knowledge.
Definitely. And one more thing, maybe closer to home for academics, personal renewal.
The burnout factor.
Exactly. Faculty involved with these communities reported higher job satisfaction, less burnout. Academic work shifting from just a profession back towards being a vocation.
Who wouldn't want that?
Hello.
Seriously, it really makes you think about our own work cultures.
Of course, Whitmore anticipated pushback, worries about, academic rigor, objectivity.
Yeah, standard concerns, yeah. How did he address those?
He points out that communities like Canterbury maintain very high intellectual standards. Thornfield herself argued that participatory reading makes you more attentive to the text, not less, more aware of its nuances and your own biases.
So it's a different kind of rigor, not an absence of it.
Precisely. And he notes the Zurich Workshop had actually published peer-reviewed research meeting conventional standards that came out of their contemplative embodied practice. They were already attracting scholars wanting this blend of rigor and transformation.
So proof of concept was already emerging.
It seems so. And Whitmore's conclusion in the memo, it's powerful. He states flatly that these post-fragmentation communities represent perhaps the most significant development in human consciousness since the scientific revolution.
Oh, wow. That's a huge claim.
Massive, and he throws down a challenge to traditional universities. The question is not whether this transformation will occur, but whether traditional universities will participate in shaping it or be left behind.
Left behind by communities finding more integrated ways to learn and live. A pretty stark warning from the future.
Or maybe an invitation.
It's just, mind-bending. Thinking this glimpse comes from an AI in 2078, showing us research from the late 2080s about such a deep shift. Final participation, participatory scholarship, reshaping how people connect with knowledge with each other.
It really pushes us to think about relevance right here, right now, in 2025. Are there little signs of this kind of integrated awareness emerging already, maybe in niche places?
And what about for you listening? Are there any small practices, ways of paying attention that you could experiment with in your work, your learning, your community, even just trying to listen with something, not just to it?
It's a powerful thought to carry away.
Absolutely. If integrating analysis and this deeper perception, this thinking with the heart, lets people see connections invisible to analysis alone, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What unseen connections, what deeper realities might you be missing just by listening to the world, instead of trying even a little to listen with it?
Something to definitely ponder.
Indeed. We'll leave you with that thought until our next deep dive.